What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. We are back, and as everybody knows, this is where you come to hear what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? I was just telling my guest here that I think his story is really interesting because it comes from a whole different angle, and you've got a married couple, and in the end of all this, you know, you're trying to help out, but he's trying to help out his wife and ends up getting into a horrible nightmare. And we were just talking about, I don't think I've had that twist before, but it's just an interesting story how it all unraveled. My guest is Bill Livolsi. We just talked about the Livolsi. Because I had put a K in Bill's name on our email, and he said, "Hey, there's no K in there." So I asked him before we get started. So it's Livolsi. Bill, you know, he's doing some cool stuff now. He's a life coach. He does it's called white collar coaching. He obviously is helping support the white collar justice people who are going through that system and helping them through that, which is a much, much needed service to people. And he's also the deputy director of Progressive Prison Ministries. And that's how I kind of ran and found Bill through Jeff Grant and their white collar support group. That's a national group that Bill is also puts all that together and gets all the notifications and speakers and all that good stuff. And I'm excited to get into this. Story, Bill. Before we do that, I want to recognize our sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. You know, who likes going and spending a couple of weekends walking the car lots, looking for a car? Then you spend like 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a trip to the dentist. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle of getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They are your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price, and they'll deliver that car to you. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. The hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Bill, welcome in. Thank you for making time to do this today.
Oh, Brent, thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
It's a Friday. I don't know when this will publish out, but it's Friday when we're talking. So, Bill, take us back a little bit into your life. Where did the young Bill grow up, and parents and siblings and all that good stuff?
Oh, well, I grew up in Pennsylvania. Outside of Philadelphia in Montgomery County, a town called, I was born in Norristown, Pennsylvania.
Okay. And
then I grew up in King of Prussia and lived there, went to high school there, went to university at Westchester. I was a music education major for a while.
Wow. Okay.
And then subsequent to that, I ended up going to St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And graduated there in a degree in accounting. And just like, my dad did before me, just started along that path.
Well, so when you were a kid, did you have siblings? Did your mom, dad? Yeah. Was that
two younger sisters?
So you're the oldest.
And I was the oldest. And mom and dad. Dad's gone now. He passed in 2009. But he was my role model.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that's very I don't think that's unusual for young men.
I would totally agree. I think, especially if you're the oldest in your family, you're the son, and your dad's plays such a big role in your life when you're
absolutely. Yeah, he was. I wanted to, I wrote about this a while ago, but I wanted to grow up and be just like my dad.
Yeah. So did you have a pretty normal school, high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, is very, dad was, early in the baby boom. So he was getting the benefits of that baby boom generation. I was born towards the end of it in 59.
Yeah.
Because I think baby boom ends at about 64.
It does. Because I was born in 67, so I'm on the very, very, what am I, Generation X? So 67. Yeah.
But he went into service, came home, and he used the GI Bill, and he went to Wharton at night.
Yeah.
Got his undergraduate, and he started, on his career. And he became very successful in the pharmaceutical business. And, to me, I looked at my dad and I said, that's this, look at how successful he is.
Uh-huh.
And that was really something I emulated. And with mom, what we really didn't find out until after dad passed was that, mom is the glue that held everything together.
Yeah.
She was quietly in the background. And that really didn't reveal itself until after dad passed, but just to see how, she recovered from that. So yeah, it was really what you would consider normal in that time.
Yeah.
The normal suburban,
good childhood.
Yep.
Mom, dad, everything's good. Dad's a success. You want to emulate that, and he's your idol. And so as you're going through, you get out of college, what are you thinking?
Mm-hmm. I thought, let me do the CPA route. I really wasn't cut out for that. So I went into industry, and I started my first real job out of college was I worked for, at the time, well, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was the Philadelphia National Bank.
Okay.
Right down in the Independence Square section of Philadelphia, right across from the Liberty Bell. And I spent a number of years there training. And I had desire to move up. So I found an accounting supervisor's job in New Jersey. So I went to that one, and worked there for a number of years. Then I had desires to go work in New York City. Found a job in New York, happened to be in advertising, as an accounting manager. And I found I really loved advertising.
Interesting. So you were in accounting, but you drifted over into an advertising firm and did accounting with advertising.
Yeah, it was, just the vibe at the place in that business at that time, was just really exciting. A lot of creative people, a lot of diversity, and I loved it. And that's in advertising on the finance side is where I spent the rest of my career, moving up in a series of moves, and ended up at VP of Finance, CFO at an ad agency that was, while I was there, we sold to a major international advertising agency holding company. So it was really, it's very exciting. And for somebody like me who started out, in suburban Philadelphia, it felt great.
So at that time, how old would you have been at that time, in that time period?
Oh my goodness.
Because it sounds like you moved up and just continued to move up and on the ladder of success.
Yeah. And I could have continued in that position. Mm-hmm. This is about 2004, beginning of 2005. I left that job in New York City because during that time period, I had moved from the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area. I was living in Las Vegas, and I was commuting. I spent Mondays and Fridays working from home, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I was in New York City.
What was that like, though? I mean, that seems like a heck of an adjustment between being on the East Coast, growing up in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, going to New York, and then all of a sudden you're in Vegas.
Yeah. There was a bit of culture shock going to Vegas from the East Coast. But, it's a place where you can adapt pretty quickly. And then also the traveling was easy because traveling was different then.
Yeah.
In the early 2000s, it was much easier to get in and out of an airport. The flight costs were a lot less. So that aspect of it was pretty simple. And it gave me, I looked at it, I'd have 4 days home, Friday through Monday day, and then, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in New York, and then come back, Thursday night. I would never do it again because, it's
a younger man.
Right. Exactly. A younger man.
What was your personal life like? What was going on in your personal world?
I had moved out to Vegas because a young woman and I had gotten engaged. And I had traveled. She was originally, when I met her, she was living in California and outside of LA. But her family was from Vegas. And, I looked at it at the time, housing prices there were low.
Yeah.
The cost of living was low. And I was like, well, and I inquired with my employer, and I said, how would you feel about, me working from home Monday and Friday and working in New York? They're like, well, you would still work 5 days a week? I said, yeah. They inquired about the technology. I said, it's pretty simple. I mean, now keep in mind, this is, the internet was still really filtering into the business world. And I showed them it was doable, and it was doable. But in end of 2004, beginning of 2005, my then current girlfriend, we were together, and she wanted to move to Oklahoma because her dad was sick.
Okay.
So we ended up moved to a small town in Oklahoma. And one of the things I found out pretty quickly was commuting from Tulsa, which is where I'm at now, to New York was not as easy as going from Vegas to New York.
Sure wasn't.
I really didn't look at it too carefully at the time. And I said, sure, I'll be able to make it work. Well, it really didn't work well. And so I made a decision. I was fairly financially secure. We already had one child together. We were destined to have another. And I said, well, let me kind of have a quasi-retirement. I can spend more time with my youngest, my two youngest. And in part of the reason it motivated me to do that was on those prior years, even though I was home 4 days a week, I missed a lot with my older kids.
Sure.
And that's another reason why I would never do a situation like that again. So, now that the older ones had kind of grown and they were doing their own thing, I thought it'd be a good idea to stay focused on the younger ones and spend more time with them, which I was able to do.
So everything seems like it's all up to this point in your life, Bill. It sounds like, things are good. You've got kids, you've got, you're married now with a second wife you've had two kids, and you're kind of winding down thinking, hey, this is the good stuff. I'm going to be that guy that's around all the time, Dad.
Right.
So what happened?
Yeah. Well, my spouse was a private money manager.
Okay.
And that business was not going well for her. And
did you know? Did you know that at the time?
No, I really didn't, because I mean, up till that time, I had invested some money, and my dad and mom had invested some money, and some others in the extended family had invested. And things were not going well for that business. There was some lawsuits, assets were frozen, and it created a really bad dynamic. Here I am in the middle here, and I've got family here, I've my spouse here. And you can just imagine the conflicts that kind of started to brew out of it.
Oh gosh. Yeah. It sounds like that. First of all, you got a marriage, and then you've got family, extended family invested into this money manager piece of investment. And you're starting to get ripples of that. Oh my gosh, this might not be fantastic.
Exactly.
What are you thinking?
Gradually you go into panic mode because things don't seem to be resolving in a positive way. And it got to the point, and I think this was probably in somewhere around 2006, 2007, probably more like 2006. I made a really horrendous decision because I was supremely arrogant, thinking that, I could fix every problem that ever arose. And I just couldn't take it anymore. I said, look, what can I do to help fix this? Okay.
You kind of had a background in knowing numbers too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. And, to my detriment, I did not really think it through. Okay. I was only thinking of the immediate problem. Okay. I didn't really look at the effect of me getting involved. And essentially what I did was that I became a middle person.
Yeah.
Assets were frozen, but there were people who wanted to make an investment into the fund. And I said, okay, well, let me help. I will step up. I'll receive those funds, and I can then be of help to you and take those funds and make the payouts to the other investors. Now, if I had half a brain in my head at the time, that is the very definition of a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
Okay.
Taking new money to pay off old investors.
And you know what? That's what I did. So my actions were really critical to, causing this loss. But here's the thing. That happened in, say, 2006, I think it was, as I mentioned. And then things went quiet. And you're kind of going, oh, well, maybe.
Dodge that bullet, yeah.
Bit the bullet, dodge the bullet. Well, not quite. Because then there were some additional civil suits on with my spouse because of those activities. And then I find out there is an FBI investigation.
How do you find that? How do you find that out, Bill? How's that?
When they came to visit and interview her.
Okay, at the house.
At the house, yeah. And we had an open first floor. It was an older house, an open first floor. So I was sitting in the other room and I heard the interview. And I didn't know enough.
One thing I was curious about, did all this that was going on, had you and your wife been talking a lot about this? Like she was sharing the stuff with the civil suits, and she was, did she think she was going to get a visit by a knock on the door?
You know what?
Did you guys talk about that?
I do not know 100%.
Yeah.
I suspect there was probably a conversation that said, there was probably some murmuring that like the FBI was involved.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of makes sense on something like that, and given the money that was involved. And so, it most likely did happen. But, it doesn't really hit home until they come to do an interview.
Sure.
And, one of the things I've learned since then is that, the FBI only comes to visit the person they're interested in. They come and visit them last.
Yeah.
So, now I know, obviously, having been in this space for a while, they had been investigating for a number of years.
Yeah.
Probably from 2007.
Right. The quiet period that you talked about.
Right. The quiet period. So they come and visit. And then in 2010, I come home from bringing my two youngest to school, and they were about 10 and 8 at this time. And I come home, and the FBI is all over the property.
Mm.
I pull in the driveway, and there's an agent there with a rifle over their shoulder. They say stop, and I'm like, okay, fine. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not coming up the driveway. So that's really when, while there was that nightmare period in the 2005, 6, and 7. It really kicks into high gear by 2010.
So did because Bill, you're like your family and everybody was involved in this, were you talking back and forth to them about these things that were going on as they were going on, and how was that all unraveling?
Well, I was really, I had a hard time. I didn't really know what to say.
Yeah.
Like my dad, and I didn't know at the time that he'd be passing in just a few short years.
Yeah.
I started cutting myself off because, once that, as things kind of got worse, I was, I was kind of ashamed. I didn't know what to say or what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of stayed in my own little world, and so the FBI comes and arrests my wife in 2010. My dad had just passed away.
Well, I can't imagine you pulling up. The place is surrounded. You've got your 10-year-old and your 8-year-old in the car. What is going through your mind?
Well, luckily I had just dropped them off at school.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so they weren't there. It's just you.
Yeah.
It's just you. So
yeah, it's just me. And thank goodness. I mean, I hope they did it by design.
Yeah.
Usually they come early. I don't know. It was in rural Oklahoma, so it could have just taken them a while to get there.
Yeah.
No, so thankfully the kids didn't see it. But I had been starting to isolate for a while because, my dad had been my confidant. He was the guy I worked things through with.
Mm-hmm.
And, even though.
And he's gone now.
He's gone, but even in 2006, 2007, 2008, even though things kind of quieted down from an immediacy front, there were still other issues, and it created a lot of conflict. And I didn't really have anybody to talk it through with, so I just kind of did what I could do on my own, and you're in your own little world. You're not looking at things in a healthy way. You're not getting an outside viewpoint. And that created a lot of problems for me and for the family.
What happens the day that you pull up and they're surrounded by the house? What happens that day?
I'm panicking, and so they let me up, and one of the agents said, we're arresting your wife. And I said, okay, what do we do? So they took her and they went up and they had an arraignment hearing in Tulsa, and she was released on OR, but she had to report to Vegas, where the case was originally out of, by a certain date. And, that started her journey, and that lasted, well, let's see, that's the end of 2010. It lasted until the end of 2013, because at the end of 2013, she had turned down a plea agreement.
Were you thinking, Bill, at the time that all this was going on, did you think you were in the heat of it?
No.
Okay.
I probably should have.
Yeah.
One of the things that, most people don't know, at least I didn't know at the time, firstly about the, when the FBI comes to visit you, they're going to visit you last. And I think the other illusion that we had, that she had, and we both shared, was that you can make this go away. Okay. And what neither of us really knew was that, when they bite on a case like this, there's only two ways it's going to resolve. It's a plea deal or you go to trial.
Right.
They're not going to let go because they don't have to. And in this case, I mean, it was, wasn't necessarily justified that they did. Mm-hmm. So when that plea agreement got turned down in probably the latter half of 2013, next thing you know, there's a superseding indictment. And I find out about it in early 2014, sometime in January, and I want to know.
Do you think that if she would have accepted the plea in 2013, that there would have been a superseding indictment?
I don't know. I mean,
because a lot of times,
I don't think there would have been. Yeah,
the only reason
there would have been. No.
Only reason I bring it up, Bill, is because it's very common that when the FBI and then the U.S. attorney doesn't get what they want out of the situation, they will then drift into a husband or wife, and I had 2 or 3 people that I was with where. Well, one guy did 16 months in county jail because he refused to give in. And then they said that they were going to indict the son and the wife. And then he gave in, and he got a much worse deal also. He gave in desperation of that. But it's interesting to think that when that happened in 2013, that was the indictment. She turned that down, and then there became a superseding indictment.
Right. So, the one thing I don't know, they could have very easily, even if she took the plea deal, they could have very easily then just filed a suit against me.
Sure.
So I don't really know.
You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. So
then your journey starts, or mine did, and so we have a husband and wife with 2 small kids.
2 kids. And I can't imagine what you're thinking, because it's not like they're teenagers. They're not 18 and 16. They're 10 and 8.
Yeah. And that's when you were really, because up to that time, I'm like, okay, well, look, if this doesn't work out, I'm here to take care of the kids.
Right.
Well, now all of a sudden that option's gone. Because I found out pretty quickly that, we mentioned earlier that once they bite, they don't let go. It's either a plea deal or trial. So that really, that just changed the whole game.
So what happened?
Oh, Brett, I got to tell you, a lot of panic.
Yeah.
And then I'm not exactly sure when in 2014 or how it happened. Somebody said, "Hey, here's somebody I think you should probably talk to." And that was Jeff Grant.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was, I remember and I wrote about this too. I remember the first time I called.
I read about it. You were in the.
Oh, you read?
You were in the.
Okay.
No, I want you to tell the story, but you were in the parking lot of Walmart.
Yeah, I just dropped the kids off at school. I was coming back, and I called, and thankfully he picked up. Because he didn't know I was going to call. I had never met the man. Well, I still haven't met him in person ever.
Yeah.
But he let me just lay it out for him.
How did you run across it, Bill? How did you find Jeff Grant? Because for those who don't know, Jeff was on 3 episodes ago, and he's got just an unbelievable story, and he's given back so much. He became an ordained minister. He got his law license. He's done incredible things within the genre that we're talking about of helping people at their worst moments. But I'm curious how you found him.
Honest to God, I am not sure. Somebody had to have told me about him. I don't really remember who it was.
Probably just desperately looking for all kinds of places.
It could have been, and it could have been something that popped up on the screen at some point.
But you're desperate at the time. So, I mean,
I am. Yeah, I'm desperate.
Right.
Just like everybody is, I think, when they're faced with something like that. And so, and I called, and we were on the phone for a long time. Mm-hmm. And he, Jeff listens really well. And then, we started building a relationship. Okay.
Did you just kind of let it all out? Is that what the phone call was?
Pretty much.
Here's where I'm at. I've got this situation. I've got these kids. I've got this indictment.
I spelled it. I spelled it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thinking back on it, I don't know what would have happened had he not picked up. I really don't.
I know, and that's a scary moment because so many people, including myself, hit that rock bottom moment, and you get into that headspace that you never have been in your life because you never expected to be in this spot, and it's a desperate moment in your world, and I think there's what I found in that, Bill, was when you hit that really solid thump, rock bottom, there's only 2 ways to go. Either you go, run yourself into a tree or something crazy, or you just grit it and say, oh, man, I'm going to have to figure out how to get out and survive this thing. And then you start doing that.
Right. And see, that was what was really, for me, important in that call, was because, it just started with little things. Starting to understand the process a little more. Starting to understand that, it's normal. And there's a lot of things you are not going to have control over right now. Okay. And just those little, those small little nuggets that you start out with that you build on.
Yeah.
And, from then on, it just became regular conversations and started talking more about the kids and building support systems for the kids, which was crucial. Building support systems, especially if you have young kids, that means you need to go and talk to their counselors at school.
Right.
And that's going to be hard because you're going to have to kind of air some of your dirty laundry at the school, but the purpose is too important not to.
Yeah. And one of the things I found, because I had daughters that were in sports and very, very good in sports. And I did, make those conversations, those rounds. And I was, I guess that's one of the things that surprised me. They were very helpful and wanted to help and wanted to get the kids through the process with as least problems as possible. And I think that's a good thing for people to know. It's better to probably talk about it when you're going through that than shield it and shame away from it, because I think there's more people out there that are looking to help than if you just bottle yourself up in a corner and,
Right.
and try to be on an island by yourself.
Yeah. I don't, I mean, everybody's situation is different, obviously, but, you know, for mine, and it sounds like for yours too, you know, involving, you know, some professionals at school,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, if one can do it, had insurance at the time, you know, being able to take the kids to a child psychologist
Mm-hmm.
to get them, you know, and start doing things together.
Yeah.
It's painful it's painful to do, but it's really important.
Yeah.
Because, you know, one of the things that the psychologist has said was that, you know, it's important if you want your kids to trust you, like you can tell them the truth in age appropriate ways.
Exactly. Yes.
You know, and so you're not having to get into all of the nitty gritty, but but you are telling them the truth about what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, you know, the kids want to know that that's what's the hierarchy of needs. You know, they're going to have food,
Security.
shelter,
Yeah.
security,
Mm-hmm.
love, you know, those,
Mm-hmm.
and the roof over their head, those kind of things. And because that's where their immediate fear goes. And also it's like, well, did they do something wrong?
Yeah.
You know, because kids, you know, but Jeff helped me really see the need to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think it has made all the difference. I mean, things aren't perfect. Okay. But I can't see, you know, I look at my young kids and even my old ones, they are, you know, they have some residual effects, but truth is, they're as good as, I mean, their lives are pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, they're making their own way.
Right.
You
Adjusted,
know, and they had to
adapted.
go into school. They're doing the things.
Yeah.
They found, when they were going through this, they found friends that would support them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I don't think I could have done that. And I don't think I could have done that part of it on my own.
And
I just didn't know any better.
And if I'm remembering this right, Bill, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but did the judge make a decision that he would stagger the sentences?
Yes.
I thought
Thank
that was
God.
interesting.
Well,
because I don't even know that some people would think to ask for that either. You know that?
No, and that was that was
Jeff.
That was Jeff too. Yeah, and what was interesting was that it was relatively recent around that time, was that the Real Housewives of New Jersey case was
Mm-hmm.
very in the news.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge there had staggered the sentence.
Yeah.
And that was the one message, and I'm just jumping ahead a little bit, but that was the one message that my court-appointed attorney, that was his only message in the sentencing memorandum. Okay. And it was also a message that was sent in when we had a report sent in from a child psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
And that made a lot of difference. It really did.
So did you, day of sentencing, did you know more or less what had been worked out, the time that you were going to get, or was it a shock?
No, I did get a downward departure.
Okay.
I was sentenced to 24 months incarceration plus 9 months of home confinement. So essentially the judge, instead of, he stayed kind of in a guideline sentence, but instead of it being in custody inside prison, there was, X months of it on home confinement. Mm-hmm. Towards the end. Mm-hmm. My wife got 45, months. And when the judge came out, the judge left the bench after we did the hearing. The judge left the bench, said, I want to go back to chambers, and I'll be back, shortly to render my decision or my sentence. Now, I thought that was normal.
Yeah.
A lot of people I've talked to said, no, my judge didn't leave chambers.
Exactly.
Doesn't leave. They right.
Yeah.
I did. And honestly, I just learned that recently. I just assumed, but I had a couple of people tell me, no, my judge was right there, never left.
Mm-hmm.
Soon as the presentations and motions were done, judge was Johnny on the spot. Okay, well, here's your sentence. So, I think that that judge really reflected on the staggering and the sentence part.
Oh, it sounds like you had a good judge, a thoughtful judge.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah.
But it was still, it was a shocking day. I can't drive past that courthouse. I've been to Vegas once or two. I've been to Vegas once since then, and I won't even go past that courthouse. It's not a place I even want to go near. Mm-hmm. It was a tough day, but you know what? At least it was over. We knew what we were facing. At that time we were losing the house we were in, so we had to get ready to move. Mm-hmm. So we had to get back and had to pack up, mm-hmm. had to pack the house, find a new place to live. So there was enough going on that we didn't really spend a lot of time dwelling on it.
So you were
able, and then she had the report. Right around. She ended up reporting right around Thanksgiving of 2015.
Okay, so she went in first.
Yes.
And then you went in after.
And then I went in, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a long time to be thinking about that I'm going to prison. So if she had 45 months, you had that time period. Now, I guess I should ask you, how was this relationship now with, you've got the two kids, you're moved, are you visiting, or are you
yeah, we're visiting.
Okay.
Phone calls? Well, we would get out. We're divorced now.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably not going to surprise many people.
Yeah.
So yeah, we would visit. I don't know. I did a count. We were in Tulsa, and she was down in Fort Worth, mm-hmm. at Carswell. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. We probably did at least 25 trips.
Yeah.
That's about 600 miles. It's about 600 miles round trip.
What was your thought, Bill, about, going there to visit? It's not easy to go visit somebody in prison, but then obviously, your husband or wife in prison, but then you're also thinking, well, I'm going to be on the other side of this deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I didn't know then, was that visiting day is not easy on the visitee.
Right. Yeah.
When you're incarcerated and if you're there for a little bit, you've got a routine going. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's working for you, hopefully. Visiting day is different. Yes, you're looking forward to it. You're looking forward to the visit. You get to see your family. But at the same time, it's kind of stressful.
Sure.
And you don't really know that unless you are the one being visited.
Right.
You also feel kind of guilty because you're putting your family through all the rigmarole of going in, going through security, all this other business,
yeah.
Having to visit you at a prison.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine, at that time, those things that were going through her head.
Sure.
Because they were going through mine when people would come to visit me.
Let's talk about that. So she gets out. You now know, I'm assuming you voluntarily mm-hmm. surrendered to wherever you were going. Were you thinking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had 30 days in the judgment I had to report 30 days after her release date.
After her release date.
And I knew that, so
that was all baked in.
That was all baked in. And I knew, this was all pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we knew what her out date was going to be. Mm-hmm. We had begun divorce proceedings anyway, during that, towards the end there. So I knew I ended up reporting on March 26th of 2019. And I surrendered to FCI El Reno, which is right outside Oklahoma City. Did
you have at the gates of the prison? You've had enough time now to think about how did you have strategies going in? I mean, it's scary. It's scary to go into prison. It is. I mean, there's nothing like it. And there's, I always say it almost feels like they're shedding the freedom off your skin as you walk through the process that day you go in. What was your world like entering that unknown world?
I mean, at that point I chose to look at it this way. This is the last thing I got to do.
Got to get it over.
And then it's, cause to me, supervised release. Okay, fine. Mm-hmm. It was like, so I went into it looking like this is the last thing I got to do.
Yep.
And when this is done, it's done.
Yep.
So, I really was get me there so I can get it over with.
Yep.
Strategy wise, there's a lot of some folks out there make a big deal about you got to have plans for this, you got to have plans for that. And okay, I mean, plans are good, but at the same time, they don't. This is an environment you've never been in.
Right.
Okay. What's Mike Tyson say? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Right. So you're going into an environment that you know nothing about.
Yep, totally unknown.
You don't know the culture. You don't know the language. You don't know the people. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can have the best plans, detailed plans in the world. Mm-hmm. Okay, what are you going to do if those detailed plans are not based in the reality of being in prison?
Yeah,
So it's for my own. It was more, broad strategy. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do for myself physically? What am I going to do for my mental health? Mm-hmm. Okay. And, if I wanted to do anything for my spiritual health. Mm-hmm. And that's really where I focused. And that's not to say it was easy to do because I had some tough times there.
Any surprises that happened to you as you entered that unknown world, or what were your surprises? Yeah. Or what was your world like?
The first, I would say 3-4 weeks, maybe even more, let's say the first 3 or 4 weeks just kind of flew by. Mm-hmm. Okay. But next thing you know, the summer's hitting. We are in the flatlands of Oklahoma. It is 100 degrees every day. And then the newness is over. So you find yourself, it was like summer doldrums. And that summer, I had a tough time that summer. Mm-hmm. Really tough time. One of the things I did, which I would not advise anybody to ever do, was that I had certain medications I was taking for anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. And a month in, I'm like, I got this. No problem. I don't need to take these anymore. Okay. No, I would not advise. So I stopped. One, I didn't taper off if I was going to do it, which was not smart. But I found out that they were helping me a lot more
than you thought they were.
Than I realized.
Yeah.
And so I was very, very fortunate maybe because the head medical person was, a guy my age.
Mm-hmm.
I said, and I just told him, I said, look, doctor, I made a mistake. I should not have taken myself off these meds. And he was able to get me, because I had surrendered them.
Sure.
He was able to redo the script so I could get them. And, so by the end of the summer, things started getting a little better. Brett, you asked about the strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things I wanted to get at, at whatever point I got there during this journey, was that I really wanted to figure out how I got into this mess.
Mm.
Like, I knew what I did to get into it.
Yeah.
But what was underlying it? Why did I make the decisions I made? Why did I sequester myself off from the people that cared about me?
Yeah.
And that was a big strategy for me. And I just did a lot of reading. I got some books from psychology services that I could read on codependency and some CBT books. And I just did a lot of my own work to try to understand this stuff.
Did you kind of come to?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
The one of my disappointments during this is that I kept waking up going, I wanted to feel different.
Yeah.
Like I expected that one day I would just wake up and I would feel like, like the light bulb went off or the clouds would open up and I had the answer.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, it doesn't work that way. And I got super frustrated until somebody said to me, you don't see the difference from when you got here to where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
This was a friend that from, when we were inside.
It's deep.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, do you? Because I really didn't see it or feel it.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah. And they said, just keep doing what you're doing. And thankfully, I'm really grateful for that piece of advice.
So when you were getting close to the door of freedom, what's going through your mind?
First of all, I had no idea it was close to the door.
You didn't have any idea you were?
No, I had no idea.
We need to talk about that.
Well, yeah. So I'm, this is early. So I got out on, March 26th. I got out April 29th. That's the day I got released.
Of 20.
I didn't find April 29th of 2020 was the day.
So that was just
my family came and picked me up.
As COVID was becoming
exactly.
a shutdown. Yeah.
Exactly. And the CARES Act was done at that point. And what we didn't know was that they were already making decisions about people they were going to get out or to send home. And it was funny because I when I was there, I worked in transportation, and I was the office clerk. Mm-hmm. And one of the COs in there said something like, to the effect of, "Well, at least you don't have to put up with us much longer," or something like that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I had no idea. Yeah. So it just I thought they were just being there, but obviously they were already making decisions.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks prior, they put about 40 of us, they closed off a wing on the camp, put up a false wall on the door, like a wall on the door. And, they quarantined about 40 of us. And we spent 2 weeks in there, but it was, we were basically we were all told within a span of 2 or 3 days. And, in a couple of days we were shifted down. They did move arounds in there. They put us in there. So it came as a surprise. So when I called home and said, I told my son, I said, I'm getting out. He thought I was joking.
Yeah. Because how much time did you think you had?
Well, I at the earliest, I figured I would not, since I had turned 60 the prior year. So I would have been eligible on the because of the elderly offender act. I would have gotten out could have gotten out earliest is like in mid-July.
Okay.
So I wasn't expecting it for a couple of months, and at the very least, or at the very latest, I would have been out, the first week of December.
Okay. Would
have been when my time ended. So this coming, in April I had no idea.
Yeah.
So, the fact that I came home and finished the balance of my sentence on home confinement, I'm like, sure. Okay. No problem.
Right.
Because not everybody, maybe, all of your listeners would know that, when you get sent home early out of custody, you will usually have to spend any time remaining on your sentence, either in halfway house or home confinement. You're not, it just doesn't end.
True. Right.
So, I spent the balance of that time from the end of April to the first week of December on home confinement because of the BOP. And then my supervised release started, and my 9 months that was part of my sentence, did it then. And those two started concurrently. So
that was great.
All things considered, it could have been a much more difficult situation.
So your parents pick you up, or your mom and
No, my parents in Pennsylvania. My son came down to pick me up. My son, yeah. So he drove down because Tulsa is about an hour and a half to 2 hours from El Reno.
Yeah.
Stopped by on the way home, saw my other son and my grandson and his wife, and then we made our way home, and I went up to probation. I was fortunate that my PO had access to, they were trying out the phone app for monitoring, so I didn't have to wear an ankle monitor.
Oh, that's fantastic. Those
so they just did it with facial recognition and GPS location. And so that really made home confinement pretty easy. And you set your schedule, and they were very accommodating, within reason.
What did it feel like to you, Bill, getting back into society? Now, because your thought is, I'm going to get this over when you're in prison, right. And then you get out and you kind of start to realize it's not quite over. I'm now living a life as someone who was in prison, coming out of
right.
prison into society. What was all going through your mind?
The biggest thing I tried to do was that, the family here had a routine. And as happy as I was, and I was thrilled to be able to get home, mm-hmm. I didn't want to screw up their routine.
Sure.
So I tried as best as I could to keep to fit into what they were doing.
Right. And
that's a challenge.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a real challenge because you're back in the place you were before you went to prison. So now you're home. So you want to pick up with what you were doing then.
Right.
But
everybody else has moved on. It's like
everybody else they're
jumping in a moving car. Let me catch up.
Yeah. So I just, some advice that I had learned from Jeff and from others in the group is just like breathe and slow down. And your job, meaning my job, is to accommodate them, not them to accommodate me, if I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
I got to fit in. I got to fit into their, we got to fit into their life.
Yes.
And so that's really was, the first couple of months, that's really just what I did my best to do.
So when did you start, Bill, because you're doing some really cool things now. When did you realize in your mind, I want to use this experience. I want to be a life coach. I want to be able to help people walk through this. Was that always with you through your journey with this, or was it something that came to you as you walked out of that into society and thought, wait a minute, I could probably help people with this?
Well, I had thoughts about it. I didn't really have the coaching aspect of it, the thought about that.
Yeah.
But, in the years, from 2015 to 2019, I am actively participating in white collar support group at Progressive Prison Ministries. And, I was really lucky to be able to have,
absolutely,
to be surrounded by people that had been through this. And so I knew that that's something that I wanted to do.
Because you had gotten a lot out of it.
Absolutely.
But I love that. You used that to get through and gain, I don't know if you call it confidence, but knowing more about the process, at least you know how to deal or how you're going to deal with it, as opposed to just the complete unknown. I'm just paying, because I always say this, nothing is as bad as your mind makes it out to be, not even prison. And what you were able to do was take that time and really get educated, hear from people who'd been through it, how they got through it. But I think it's really, I love it when people take something that was a horrible experience and know that you can use that in those things that you did now to give it back to people who were in the same position you were, that are desperately trying to figure out the next step.
Right. And I had that had that thought that I wanted to do it when I got home. And we even, there was a couple of guys that, we became pretty friendly and tight inside, and we would have those conversations.
Yeah.
About, what do you think? Why did you end up here? Or what were your decision making patterns back then? And it wasn't an intellectual discussion. It was real, just like talking. This what was going on. And it was some pretty raw stuff.
Sure.
And it was really enlightening. And spending all those weeks and months, being part of the group here and seeing, other men, other women who were out the other side, who actually had smiles on their faces, helped me realize that whatever happens, I'm going to be okay. Yeah. I don't know what it's going to be like, but I'll be okay. Yeah. And I would hate to see anybody have to go through this alone.
And there are so many that do, Bill. I mean, I think there's so many layers why that is, but I noticed that there was a lot of guys that I talked to when I was in, and so many guys did go through it alone. They were on their own journey, on their own island, and didn't have any support or mentors or anything around them to be able to give them some guidance. And man, that to me is a different journey.
It is.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. And that's, so when I got home, and I said, well, I started, once I was kind of getting acclimated, I said, well, what would be the best way for me to do that? So I started, and I found some different coaching courses. I took one that was free to make sure I liked it. Then I ended up through another place. I took their course, and it really gave me some valuable tools. And I decided, well, if I'm going to do this, let's do it, because it's going to take a while to build. And it also is very helpful with things I do with the ministry and the support group.
Oh, of course, it's parallel.
And you learn. You learn to listen differently. You can ask some really simple but really powerful questions that kind of make people go,
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it, and it's not to be gotcha. It's to be getting people to think.
Right.
And it's, you know, that part of it is really, you know, being able to volunteer for the ministry and things is really rewarding.
And I'm assuming that your kids are good. You mentioned that they were living and doing good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're doing, yeah. I mean, I've got 5 kids.
Yeah.
The youngest are 20 and 18,
okay.
and they were the ones that were 10 and 8.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I mean, they're making their way.
Yeah. All in all, things are pretty good.
Yeah.
What do you think, Bill, going through the journey, the experience that you went through, what do you think's your biggest takeaway through all of it?
Well, I don't think that there's one.
It doesn't have to be one. You can give me more than one.
I think that you have to find, at least, and not you have to, I'm just saying, for me, I would hate to see somebody do what I did, and that was sequester themselves away. Okay, it wasn't until I started talking to somebody who understood the experience that I could start to breathe a little more, and not that I started to understand that as difficult as it's going to be, and it is difficult, it does not have to be a disaster.
No, that's,
you know, so
that's a good
I
statement.
would never want someone to has sequestered herself away.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for help.
That's huge. I think those two things are big.
Too many guys don't ask for help.
Yes.
Okay. And it's funny, you have this conversation with and it's not just men, it's sometimes women. And sometimes I'll ask them, and I'm sure you've done the same thing. How do you feel when somebody asks you for help? Does it bother you? No, I like it. I like being able to help somebody.
Right.
I said, so why do you think it'd be any different if you ask somebody else for help? You know, but I don't know if it's pride or shame or a combination.
I think
I don't know.
I think it's pride. I think pride and ego is the society in some cases has felt like that shows some kind of weakness that you can't take care of it on your own. You know, the old fashioned,
right,
you got to, get through this yourself. But I think that was good advice. You know, that what you're going through, you'll make it. It's not going to be a disaster. You can find your way. And secondly, ask for help. Use mentors. Yeah. Make yourself.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I like that.
And the thing of, and I also think it's important too for people to understand is that everybody's journey in this is different.
Sure.
Okay. I don't think anybody, no one has the absolute answer about what you need to do for you.
Right.
So the more you listen, the more you absorb from different sources that are credible, the better off the more I did that, the better off I was.
Yeah.
Because no one knows you as well as you do deep down.
Yeah, you just got to be honest with yourself.
Right. And somebody else's prescription about how you get through this might have been great for them. It might not work for you.
Right. Yeah. Which is great for a life coach, what you're talking about, because a life coach needs to listen, understand what motivates somebody, and then put that in place, those things that motivate them to get them to step into what they're wanting to step into.
Yeah. Because look, and coaches don't do this, and we don't do this in the support group either. We don't tell people what to do.
Right.
Okay. It's like, here's my experience, or here's what happened. Here's what worked for me. Here's what didn't work for me. Okay. And now you take that and make it your own, in ways that are going to work for you. I mean, a coach helps you do that,
Sure.
but a coach doesn't tell you what to do,
Right.
you know, and that, you know, the other thing, so being able to do that actively now, and also being able to spend a lot of time, with the ministry, it gives me a real opportunity to, you know, try to help catch some people at their low moments, you know, and get them into a community where you're not so isolated.
No, and I think that fills you up. You know, when you know you're catching somebody at a low moment and you can help them and you can put them on the path that they want to be on or need to be on, there's no better feeling than that.
Yeah, it really is rewarding. It really is.
For those who want to get in touch with you, Bill, is whitecollarcoaching.com. Is that what that is?
Yes. Yeah. At whitecollarcoaching.com. If you're interested in maybe participating in the White Collar Support Group, you can email me at info@prisonist. That's prisonist like feminist.org. And also, I just wanted to also put a plug in. On Thursday nights, a friend of mine runs a company called Evolution Reentry. It's in Connecticut, but I facilitate a family justice impacted support group on Thursday nights. And if you know anybody, any listeners know anybody who has family that have, incarcerated friends or loved ones, they can just go to evolutionreentry.com. And there's a link there for support group for families.
That's awesome.
And I will get that and get you involved.
That's awesome, Bill. I love it. I love your story. I love how you've come out of it. I love how you've taken your experience and built on something that you know about and you can help people and it fills you up and it's a great nightmare success story. For those who are looking for a book named Nightmare Success, I wrote one. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you got time, man, I'll tell you, leaving a review on Apple or Spotify really puts the show on steroids. And man, if you get anything out of the show, share it. It's easy to share. Just hit that forward button and share it out. For getting more of my stuff, BrentCassidy.com. Remember, I spell Cassidy wrong. I'm not Sean or David. I spell it with a T-Y. And as I used to say when I was writing my emails back and forth when I was in, stay strong, and I'll do the same. Bill, thanks so much for being on the show today. Appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you. This has been great fun. Thank you.
Nightmare Success, in and out.